is vital. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time to share every single organization because they're countless, but we are in this together. And so I just want to emphasize those partnerships. And many of you are actually on the call here today. Next slide, please. And so what does intake look like? You can see here, phone, email, sometimes in person, sometimes the website, the contact us form. And then I have listed kind of what we provide for direct services. So information can be anything from crime victims' rights, information about, what does the courtroom look like? The district attorney's offices do a wonderful job of making sure that folks know, where to sit. But sometimes it's so early in that process that they haven't had a chance yet to think about, if I have to go to court, where do I walk in, where do I sit? So I share that example. Sometimes it's stuff we might take for granted that people need support. And then general systems advocacy, how do I order a death certificate? That's something that a lot of folks, why would you know how to do that? So it's on our website, but we walk people through where to find that, how to pay for it. I've listed here crime victim compensation. They have a portal, but they also have a paper application that people can send in the mail. Printed resources, I think I've shared our Surviving Violent Crime Handbook that has information about the court system, grief, Marcy's Law. I think it's 52 pages. So I emailed, it's available in both English and Spanish. And then a couple of these others I have slides for, so I'm going to skip. But don't ever overlook, in my mind, I just want to share, we never overlook just basic needs. And so an example of that is I was sharing with somebody who had had a loved one murdered. This person now was a caregiver of her loved one's children. And she said, Elizabeth, I'm so grateful to hear that you all can help with grief therapy. But right now, I am drowning in laundry. I need help just with this, managing my home that is now so different. And so I share that to say, sometimes we don't think about those basic needs, but those are often core of what people need at some point. So we were able to work out an arrangement with the nearby laundromat to help her for a few months. And ongoing support is something that is vital to our work. Grief has no timeline. And so sometimes our support can be for months, years. There's really no linear timeline for complicated grief. And so I just want to say that throughout our services, there's just ongoing support of those folks. Next slide, please. And so just to know, according to the SBI summary report, there's between 500 and 900 homicides in North Carolina each year. That does not tell the story, because statistically there are 10 surviving loved ones of homicide per victim. Often we track and capture the data for the one person who calls us, but that person is then conveying all of those resources and information to their loved ones and to the community. And next slide, please. And so I was sharing earlier what this application looks like for assistance with travel. The reason I put it on this slide is because I want to make sure I share that this is through collaboration with the district attorney's offices. Up to 3 loved ones can be reimbursed for any open hearing in any district. The only thing that I really need to recognize today with all of you, because it is on our website, is that this is for people who are loved ones interested in attending court who are not testifying witnesses, because the state should pick up that cost, and these funds are limited because they're grant supported. So just kind of, since I have this on here, I want to make sure I share that. This allows folks to exercise their crime victims' right to be present. This is not, this is not something people plan to do. This isn't fun. And so to be able to help with those out-of-pocket costs sometimes makes the difference between folks being able to be there or not. So it's a huge impact. And we've managed this program for many, many years. Next slide, please. Along with the travel reimbursement, we have volunteers who are trained with over 30 hours of training specific to working with loved ones of homicide victims. They learn about Marcy's Law, ethics, the court process, working with people who are people of faith or non-faith or anti-faith, confidentiality, trauma-informed care. And so we are able to, when folks opt in, we're able to say, you know, there's someone who can sit with you in the courtroom. Sometimes it's navigating, and I give this example, getting to the bathroom, getting to someone's car in a parking deck after court, because you know you can imagine on the best day, you know, you might forget where you parked in a parking deck, but when you're about to walk in to lay eyes on the perpetrator that took your person's life, it's very common to kind of forget where you parked. And so it's important to companion folks, you know, through that courtroom and then past the courtroom. I mentioned here that we included seat cushion in our court care kit. That picture doesn't show the seat cushion. That's a really important element for us because we hear about people as they sit, they sometimes don't realize they're clenching their teeth or are just so, you know, in those hard benches, they're just so tense. And so just that little bit of comfort goes a long way. Next slide, please. And I'll go a little faster. I don't want to take over the whole time here, but here's our support groups, which again, long-term support. We have folks who might join 2 weeks after a homicide or 20 years. And so they are welcome. We don't have a time limited, you know, way to determine who is eligible and who isn't. It's anybody. You can see the list of our groups and a way to register. They're facilitated by a person who has lived experience. Next slide, please. And then grief therapy is dependent on grant funding for loved ones of homicide victims. Statewide, again, allows the person to choose the best fit for that person. And then we set up a contract and handle the payments. Next slide, please. And then I have just some pictures of other direct services that I think are best shared in pictures. We talk about how folks want to say the name of the loved one, say the name of the person who whose life was taken by violence. So throughout our events, our memorial events, we say their names. We might have their names printed, as you'll see in the next slide. We might have a picture, and it's a safe space for people to come and know that they're with people that who can say, I know exactly what you're going through. Next slide, please. So this is an image of our Survivors of Homicide Victims Awareness Month candlelight vigil. This is one year we held at the state capitol. We normally have in our memorial garden. I'm not going to read the quote, but I have consent to share the quote from one of the survivor speakers whose sister was murdered, just to talk about, you know, how important it is to gather. I think to have a safe space during the holidays. It's a time when people feel like they have to be happy, and we just say, you know what, show up how you show up. We're here. You're not alone. You don't have to pretend to be joyous. We will say the name of your person. We have these luminaries. People create them on site, or we send a kit in the mail if they'd like to create one at home and mail it back. We include the postage. So that's our vigil. Next slide, please. And then our 5K walk run is held as close to the Saturday of National Remembrance of Murder for murder victims. You can see the pictures that have been submitted by family members and loved ones. We laminate them and post them in the start finish. And we have, you can see the back of they walk or run in memory or in honor of their person. And this is a really special time, again, for folks to gather who can say, I know what you're going through. Next slide, please. I mentioned at the very beginning our Crime Victim Memorial Gardens. I wanted to share a picture. Those of you who have never seen it, it's between the Governor's Mansion and the Legislative Building. And you can see our bricks that are engraved. This is no fee to the family. And we have, gosh, probably over 400 bricks engraved in our garden. We host our Crime Victims' Rights Week ceremonies there. I know you can't see the list of sponsors, but I have included the plaque to remember the founders who worked tirelessly. Then Senator Roy Cooper, who supported this, but so many people who helped lay the first brick in this garden. So it's truly a sacred place. Next slide, please. And so those were just kind of ongoing long-term support for loved ones in homicide. There is a community that is not in any kind of traditional organization, and that's the gunshot, stabbing, and physical assault victims, not related in any way to domestic violence or sexual violence. And so we have a support group for those folks, but we also have on our website information that would be helpful to them. Crime victims' rights, certainly, victim compensation for hospital bills. Oftentimes, as simple as find my DA, what district. That's something that people assume people know. A lot of times they don't. And then information about support groups. So that is, I think, the last slide. And you can see we have general resources on there as well. And I tried to keep it under 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now we'll go ahead and start with Ontario.
Good morning, everyone. As stated, my name is Ontario Joyner, and I serve as the program manager for the City of Durham's Office of Survivor Care. We're a newer office within the Community Safety Department. If you're in North Carolina or specifically in Durham, if you've ever heard of the Heart Team, we are within that same department that houses the Heart Team. Next slide. Okay, so our story, like I said, we're a newer office. We came from a recommendation from the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force here in Durham, and it truly was just in response to the rising concerns about the unmet needs of our survivors here in the city of Durham as it relates to gun violence. We received a lot of early support from city leadership, but I think what's more important is that we received a lot of support from our community advocates, our residents, and our survivors directly from in the city of Durham. And our overall design and purpose was to just be survivor centered, a trauma informed response unit that addresses gun violence and immediate response here within the city. Next slide, please. So some of the early insights that we received, many survivors, if you could imagine, just overall just felt overwhelmed with the complexity of just kind of navigating through different services. Here in Durham, Durham is a resource wealthy city and county. There is pretty much a resource for anything that you could truly think of. So trying to navigate through those particular spaces while processing grief and while processing trauma could be sometimes overwhelming for our survivors. So the early insights say that, hey, we need a particular office and a particular point of contact to help our survivors navigate through that. In addition to that, most families just experience delayed and fragmented support. We all understand that sometimes many programs are overworked and understaffed. So therefore, finding ways to bridge that gap and be a traverse for our survivors and the resources that are needed and the resources that are offered in the community, that's the approach that we wanted to take, and that's some of the challenges and the barriers that needed to be addressed within the city. And there was a strong demand, like I said, for one single point of contact. It's easier for a family who is experiencing grief or trauma to kind of reach out to one particular entity or one individual and say, hey, this is what we need. This is what we are in need of. This is what we're lacking. These are the barriers we are facing. And we can kind of take on some of that hardship of making the phone calls, making the referrals, and not leaving them to kind of do that on their own as they're trying to process the loss of a loved one or trying to process what their way of life may look like now if they are the direct survivor of gun violence. And just building that community trust. Also, educating communities, educating individuals on specific trauma literacy that can be pretty effective in providing important services that are needed within the community and within these families that are directly impacted. Next slide. So as we kind of welcome you to the Office of Survivor Care, like I said, we are a newer office. We officially started accepting referrals in July of 2025. And, our referrals have steady come in. The way we always have looked at it is we want to work with our survivors who are directly impacted. But when we get a referral, we understand that that is in response to an unfortunate event involving gun violence. So the Office of Survivor Care, like I said, we're a newer office, and we provide direct service to individuals and families impacted by gun violence. The key thing about us, like, we just don't work with one individual. We try to encompass that entire family. So we work with adults and we work with children as well, because many times the youth that, are affected kind of aren't always put at the forefront. We want to make sure that our children and our youth that are directly impacted, that their voices are heard also. Our mission statement is to compassionately support, uplift, and empower survivors by fostering a healing-centered, community-rooted approach. And we're dedicated to just building trust, restoring dignity, and advancing justice. Next slide, please. So our core values, always, as many of you know, if you're doing this work, is going to be compassion centered care. We truly believe in meeting our survivors where they're at. Um, and when I say where they're at, I mean that emotionally and physically where they are at. We will go and meet with our survivors at their residence. We will meet with our survivors at our office. We will meet with our survivors somewhere at community, whether it's at the library, a coffee shop, a rec center. We've even met with our survivors and literally walked with them in downtown Durham and just held conversations and provided a safe space for them just to be heard, no matter what that conversation may look like. We also practice empathy, respect for our survivors. We understand that, this is trauma and grief looks completely different from everyone. So we want to make sure that we're being respectful, and empowering while we're working with our survivors. Community collaboration. Like I said, with us being a newer office, I'm an individual who believes in community partnerships and community collaboration because that's the only way we can kind of push the needle forward. So we've built great relationships with a lot of community-based organizations, a lot of government organizations within our specific area. And really, we have just simply asked, like, hey, what do you guys do well? What are you doing? What have you seen that has worked? And how can we kind of merge our two offices together to truly partner? I do believe that partnerships are important simply because the people that benefit from partnerships are the people who truly need the services. Equity and justice, we want to break systematic barriers. Um, we want to break those barriers. We want to make sure that our survivors feel heard, they feel protected, and make sure that opportunities are presented and make sure they have every resource that they needed or that they need are at their immediate disposal. And just empowerment through voice and choice. Like I talked about earlier, community collaboration. We just don't collaborate with community partners. We want to make sure that we are collaborating with our survivors as well and letting them know, like, hey, this is your life. You're the expert of your own life. Simply asking, what do you need during this time? Um, like I said, Durham is full of resources. I could give you 100 resources, but if I haven't given you the opportunity to let me know what you truly need and what's going to be the most beneficial for you to process your trauma and grief, then we're doing you an in service. So we truly believe in partnering with our survivors and just saying, hey, just simply let us know what you need when you're ready, because we understand that just because we feel that we want to work with you immediately, our survivors may not be ready for that right now. All we want to do is make sure that they are aware that, hey, we are here to be a support for you when you're ready. Next slide, please. So, as far as our services, one of our major services that we offer, like Elizabeth said, we offer bridge therapy as well. We offer up to 16 weeks of bridge therapy with the hope that we can get our survivors connected to a permanent therapist well before that 16 weeks. We are a small staff. Currently, as myself as the program manager, we have one clinician on staff. She does all of our bridge therapy sessions. So as you can imagine, building, like I said, community partnerships and being able to refer out is going to be imperative to our survivors, not us as an office, but imperative to our survivors. So we built a great network of about 23 referral sources for continued therapy, some in which are offer pro bono services, many of which accept Medicaid as well. And we've built that great network. One thing I will say about our clinician, she's really big on that warm handoff. So she builds a great relationship with our therapists that are on within our database. So she can personally call and say, hey, we're making this referral for this particular individual. So that way it's a soft handoff. The last thing we want to do is re-victimize our survivors as we're trying to get them connected to a permanent therapist. We also offer traditional case management, which we like to call survivor advocacy, because we don't want to refer to our survivors as just a simple case. We're really selective and really transparent about the verbiage that we use. So we're going to always refer to the individuals that we're working with as survivors because that's what they are. Psychoeducation, overall advocacy. We support our survivors through court proceedings. We partner with the Religious Coalition for a Nonviolent Durham to assist with some of the court accompaniments as well. Like I said, we support the overall family. I believe Elizabeth put up a great chart with data that said, I believe you said it was 10 family members that are affected um, in response. So imagine that we get a referral for one person and then we start to encompass the entire family. Now we're starting to support a whole family. Help with the North Carolina Victim Compensation Fund. If you have ever worked on or submitted an application for the Victim Compensation Fund, you understand that there's a lot of supporting documents that are needed. If a family is processing grief and trying to get those supporting documents, it can truly be overwhelming. So we do all of that legwork on behalf of the family. We get the police reports, we get the death certificates, we get all of the itemized receipts that are needed, and we submit on that family's behalf, and we do all of the follow up. We try to follow up every 2 to 3 weeks and just simply send out an email and just simply say, hey, we just want to do a follow up on behalf of this family. Where are they at within the process? And once we get it, we relay that message directly to the family. And we always be transparent with our updates. So I think it's great that we built that rapport and that relationship with Victims Comp, so we can get direct information and we can give real concrete updates and properly explain it to the family, because the last thing we want to do is give a false narrative or give false hope about possibly being approved or denied. So we just simply reach out to them directly and get that information and relay it back to our survivors that we're working with. Overall connections to community resources. Like I said, it's a lot of resources here in Durham. I don't know what other way to put it. If you're in Durham, I'm preaching to the choir. There are a lot of resources, and navigating those resources can sometimes be a little challenging. So we try to eliminate some of those barriers of who do I need to call? Where do I need to send this to? Allow us to kind of do that lead work and work with you in that. And just overall empowerment and community engagement. We truly believe in engaging with our community and learning what resources are needed, being present in the community, partnering with DHA to do certain events within certain communities. And overall, all of our services are free. It costs nothing. So a survivor being able to get up to 16 weeks of bridge therapy for completely free is imperative. So we pride ourselves on being able to provide free services and also partnering with other organizations who provide free services. Next slide, please. So in order for a person to be eligible for our service, of course, they have to be housed within the city of Durham. We are now starting to expand a little bit in accepting cases that are for individuals who may live within the county limits. Right now, our services are focused on individuals who are directly affected by gun violence, whether it be an individual or the families. Um, and as far as priority, like I said, we are a limited staff. We'll take the referrals and we'll work with everyone. But individuals who have been directly impacted within the last year will take priority. We have a internal triage system that we do use, especially if it's going to be related to bridge therapy. That's why us building this network of outside therapists is imperative to us, because the last thing we want to do is to get a referral and we can't even refer a person out to a permanent therapist if they're in desperate need of that. And we work with individuals regardless of age, sex, race, insurance status. Like I said, everything is free, and we partner with other therapeutic agencies and companies that accept a wide variety of insurance. And we work with individuals regardless of your immigration status, and that has been a key topic in today's time. Next slide, please. So how we work, like I said, we're going to always take a survivor-centered approach. We prioritize our survivors, and we encourage them to pick your own pathway of healing. Like I said, healing, support, and long-term stabilization is going to always look completely different across the scale of individuals who are survivors. So we're going to always take that survivor-centered approach and encourage them to, hey, you're in the lead right now. Just let us know how we can support you. Even when we do our initial reach out, when we get a referral, we understand that families could be processing. We understand that individuals could be processing. So we don't want to be pushy. We don't want to overstep our boundaries, and we don't want to be disrespectful. We simply say, hey, we want to just let you know that we are here to support you when you're ready. Usually during our first initial contact, if a family has lost a loved one, we always come with a sympathy card on behalf of our office and our department leadership. We try to bring groceries, like Elizabeth said, like basic needs. Like we always take this approach of thinking of, the overall end goal when many people just need just that basic needs, whether it's laundry insecurities, food insecurities, clothing insecurities. We just try to be that traverse to say, hey, whatever it is you need, let us know, and we'll try our best to make sure that you get what you need. We're very transparent over here. If it's something that is particularly outside of our scope, we'll be transparent and let that be known, like, hey, that's not traditionally in our scope. However, we'll make a few phone calls and see if we can find that. I can't guarantee that we can get it, but what I can guarantee is that I'm going to make the attempt and I'm going to put forth the effort to get you what you need. Trauma informed care. We recognize the mental and physical impacts of trauma, and deliver service to promote safety, trust, and recovery. Trauma informed care, guys. I believe that's a something that we all probably should understand on this call. I'm not going to assume, but I think we all understand the importance of trauma informed care. Excuse me. Um, we want to commit to removing those barriers of care by providing the services that are free. I touched on that before. Um, we work with individuals who are facing certain financial barriers. So the fact that we can provide all of our services free is imperative to our survivors that we're working with, and we want to continue to do that. We want to make sure that everything that we offer is accessible, and is pretty much is impactful within the community. And like I said, we're going to always coordinate and working within an ecosystem. We understand that we want to partner intentionally. We want to be intentional with our partnerships. We want to make sure that we're working with community-based organizations. We want to make sure that we're working with various government organizations. And we don't want to make duplicate services. You know what I'm saying? So our whole thing is saying, hey, what services do you offer? How can we get our survivors? And simply, what does a referral look like? What does your wait list look like? So we can relay that message with realistic expectations for our survivors. Next slide, please. How to make a referral. We are a very simple program as it as it relates to referrals. You simply just fill out a referral link. And once we get it, we try our best to reach out to our survivors within 48 hours. We're really big on doing that. If we call a survivor or we send a text or email to a survivor and we don't get a response, we'll follow back up with the referring source and say, hey, we reached out to John Brown. We didn't get an answer. Is there an alternative number that we could reach out to? Is there any other means of communication that we could utilize, simply because we understand how imperative like this window could be for our survivors, and we want to make sure that we're properly doing our due diligence and reaching out to them, but also being respectful to the family as well, especially if there's a death involved. We want to make sure that we're being respectful, but we also want to let them know that, hey, we are here to support y'all in any way. When you're ready to engage, we'll be here. We'll be right here to help pick up the pieces for whatever resources that y'all may need. Um, and we always want to provide updates and consent as needed, especially as it relates to bridge therapy. We'll get proper consent, and we'll make sure that our survivors feel safe, make sure that they feel heard, especially if they're getting bridge therapy through us, and we want to make sure that is carried on when we get them placed into some form of permanent therapy. Next slide. So some of our community partners, this is just a very small percentage of the resources and the partners that we have here in Durham. But just to go through a few, it'll be the LGBTQ plus Center, Durham Police Department, the Religious Coalition for a Nonviolent Durham, Durham Crisis Response Center and Family Justice Center, Take Care Durham, the Housing Authority, our emergency chaplains, El Futuro, and Duke's Violence Recovery Program. Like I said, that is a small list. If I listed every resources that we partner with in Durham, I would be well over my 15 minutes on one slide. So that is just a small list of some of the resources that we intentionally partner with. Next slide. So, like I said, partnership and collaboration is what we're always, striving to do. Not only just with partners, we want to make sure that we're partnering with outside organizations and community-based organizations and government organizations as well. So, That just kind of helps us streamline referrals from your organization. We want to have meetings. We want to be able to understand what the referral process looks like, what your organization offers, so we can relay that message to our survivors that we're working with. We want to make sure that we are trauma informed. So if that means if your organization, if you're holding different webinars, if you're holding trainings, we want to be able to attend those trainings too, to make sure that we're properly equipped in trauma informed care. Co-hosting events, listening sessions. Here in Durham, we've held a few listening sessions with community residents to hear some of the concerns that they have related to gun violence that's happening in the city, and just identifying those gaps and trying to find the proper solutions to address those gaps. That's what collaboration is, guys. Gun violence can't be solved in one particular organization by one particular individual. It's going to take a team effort and a collaborative effort to address that. So next slide, please. So the Office of Survivor Care was created with and for the people of Durham. We're committed to being responsive, compassionate, and collaborative. Together, we can just build this system that truly honors and uplifts our survivors. I think the most important piece of this is just uplifting and supporting and honoring our survivors. So that's our main goal. That's our main focus. Is just being present, just being a resource that's trusted, a resource that our survivors feel comfortable, they feel safe, and they feel welcome. Next slide, please. Here's our QR code for our referral form. If you're in this webinar and if you're in Durham and you're working with a survivor of gun violence, if you're yourself, if you're a survivor of gun violence, or if you know anyone, feel free to just scan that QR code. That'll take you to our referral link. It's a simple referral link, probably take you a couple of minutes to fill out. We'll get it. And like I said, we'll process it and we'll reach out to our survivors directly and try to start that rapport, start to build that relationship, and just try to be present with them as much as we can when they need us in any way that they need us. Okay. So next slide, please. And that brings us to the end. This is our contact information. My contact information is at the top, as well as our clinician. Like I said, we're a small team, guys. We are a very small team. However, we are prepared and we are excited to be working in this space here in the city of Durham.
Thank you so much, Ontario. Thank you as well, Elizabeth. It was really great to hear and listen to all of the services and programs that you all offer to help support survivors within our state. Now we're going to pivot to a brief kind of roundtable discussion where I'll ask the presenters a few questions. After that, we'll have a few minutes, a little more than a few minutes, to open up the questions to the audience. So if you do have any questions for our presenters, please drop those in the chat if you haven't already done so. And then after our roundtable discussion, we'll get to those audience questions. So to begin our conversation, I'd like to start by discussing the experiences you all encounter in this work. What challenges have you experienced in providing services for victims and survivors of community violence?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I mean, I can take it. I can start off. For us, particularly our office is simply capacity. For us, it's the capacity. Like I said, we're a small team. That's why partnership is so imperative for us. Collaboration is going to be imperative for us because we are a small team. However, building that ecosystem, building that network of reliable resources, keyword being reliable resources, is how we're going to continue to push the needle forward. One of the another challenge that we're starting to see a lot now is just the need for emergency housing for our survivors. Prime example, man, we worked with a survivor who was shot in her residence, and had to return to that residence while her perpetrator was not caught. Perpetrator was still at large, and our survivor had to return back to the residence where, unfortunately, she was victimized. The bullet holes were still within the walls of the residence. So imagine the trauma with coming back to your residence and having to physically see those bullet holes still within your residence. So I would say that's one of the major challenges that we're facing. Trying to identify emergency housing, the funding to support that emergency housing, where we could relocate our survivors, especially if it's related to the immediate survivor or the family who may be experiencing potential retaliation.
I think I would agree absolutely with what you're sharing. Basic services, housing, after a homicide, also capacity. I think for us, just kind of defining surviving loved ones as victims has been a new, I think, kind of a new way of talking about folks who really do need services and resources. And I think the other thing that's just kind of over our mission that's a challenge is for folks to understand that grief is not linear. So a lot of times people have the expectation that someone will be over something at some point and that there will be, I'm going to use quotes here because this is not a word we use, but there will be closure. And not really understanding that, gosh, that doesn't happen in a tragic and traumatic loss. Just more sensitizing folks to that.
Thank you both for sharing those insights. Another challenge in providing care is that sometimes practitioners kind of lead with assumptions about the communities that they serve. Obviously, that's a human experience. Just we naturally, as humans, make assumptions, but it's really important for us to check those biases and make sure we're not projecting those onto the communities and people that we serve. So, with that in mind, what are some assumptions practitioners often make when working with survivors? And how can practitioners better support survivors in a trauma-informed way?
You want to take this one?
I'll take
Luna?
this one. I
Okay.
think I can speak to this. For us, and again, this is a learning experience and hearing from folks and listening sessions and support groups and speaking with our community. I think one of the assumptions is um, that there's one roadmap that
Mhm.
people are on and they feel the same way about something. I don't mean to use othering language when I say they. I'm sorry to constantly do that, but I'm talking about this community. So um, we have to understand that justice doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. There are folks
Mhm.
who will say, there is no justice. The only justice would be to bring my person back. And there are other people who will say, I went to court and I did feel a sense of justice. So just understanding that everybody has their own path and every experience is different.
Mhm. I think also too, just to add on to that is survivors may not want to immediately engage with you. Um, they're navigating through shock, grief, instability. So I think understanding that like we can't put a timeline on grief, we can't put a timeline on trauma, but being respectful to that, creating that safe space. And sometimes I don't want us to focus on like trauma informed care is just not, about the services that you provide, but more importantly, it's more so about like how you provide those services. Are you being approachable? Are you creating a safe space for our survivors to even want to engage with you? So
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So that was incredibly helpful. So now I'd like to talk about your programs. From your perspective, which of your services, if any, if there are any in particular, do you feel are having the greatest impact on your communities?
I
I'll,
mean,
I'll say for
go ahead.
oh
Go
I'm
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'll
You
I'll
go ahead.
I'll say 100% for us. Bridge therapy.
Mm.
Bridge therapy for us has really been one of the major reasons for referral to the Office of Survivor Care, because a survivor can get up to 16 weeks of bridge therapy. Like that has been one of the major reasons for a referral for us. Like I said, we have one clinician on staff, but her ability to get start bridge therapy, but also get our survivors connected at a fast rate to a permanent therapist that is a reliable therapist, therapist that is trauma informed care trained, a therapist who truly takes passion and takes pride in working with our survivors. Like that has been a pivotal and so important to the mobility and the expansion of our office. In addition to us just building certain partnerships and listening to what the community says that they need. So we have a couple MOUs in place, one being partnering with Deuce Violence Recovery, where we're doing more support groups for direct survivors of gun violence themselves. In many spaces in Durham is grief related, so we wanted to make sure that we partnered and had spaces for our survivors of gun violence directly to have a safe space to come and allow their emotions to move and just talk through certain raw emotions that they may have. In addition, we partner with Durham Parks and Rec, and we're doing grief and trauma walks. Just in local walking trails, we're trying to merge the mental health aspect of trauma informed care as well as the physical health, because the two kind of work hand in hand. So those are some of the initiatives that we're working on. But I would say, to the original question, bridge therapy has truly been one of our biggest components of our office.
I would agree with I think therapy, I think any direct service and all direct service, I think it would be hard for me to measure what we do. So I will say all direct services, but I will also say that longstanding collaborations, as Mr. Joyner was saying. I mean, we need each other. We need to be able to trust each other to be able to refer folks over and to know exactly what it is that organization offers and not just give a phone number and hope. Because sometimes that one extra phone number that someone dials and the person or the organization is not the right fit is the thing that breaks them, and we have to understand trauma and not just handing off a whole list of resources, but knowing really call this one because this one is the one that has this that you're looking for. So that's something that I think we should talk about more. And also, I think I didn't share this earlier, but carving out support where you see a gap, being able to see things in real time and say, "Wow, we need to meet that need." And one of the things that we did, two things that we did, actually, is we launched a opioid loss support group after there were folks who were joining our support group who, yes, the dealer was charged with murder or death by distribution, but what they wanted to discuss was very different from what we were discussing in our gun violence traditional support group. So we carved out a support group specific for that community and is facilitated by someone with lived experience with opioid loss. And the second is after Helene, shortly after Helene, we launched Renew and Restore for frontline workers, understanding that it's really critical to support, and this is all of you on this call, so I'm glad I get a chance to speak to it, support the people providing the service. Burnout is real. We are living in difficult times, and so being able to have that kind of support for folks just to process some of the trauma was something that I think was really impactful.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. And then I have one last question for you all before we jump to the audience. So what are some considerations for providing services to someone who has both carried out and survived violence?
This has come up a few times, so this is a great question. This is a super question. I think we have to bring humanity into a story and into our community and say that people are rarely defined by
Mhm.
a single moment or role in their life. And I also think, in our experience, we've had to be very clear on boundaries and set those boundaries. And we have, for support group, we have agreed group agreements that we read prior. We email them out, but also read prior to every meeting that speaks to that. And I think identifying support sometimes for someone individually outside of the group is best to keep the group safe. So depending on the scenario, but we have had that experience.
Mhm. Yeah, and like we've worked with, the perpetrator, and we've worked with survivors, obviously. But I think, like, if we only see someone as just an a quote unquote offender or a victim, like, we kind of risk overlooking the full context that kind of shapes that person's experience, their needs, and their pathways to kind of move forward. Um, so I don't want to I don't want people to think that providing support um, means that we're excusing, behavior. Um, but instead, like, it means that we're kind of creating a space for healing. We're creating certain spaces for reflection, and realistically, we're creating a space for change. But like Elizabeth said, creating those clear boundaries also around accountability as well as safety.
Thank you both for that. Thank you both for your incredibly helpful insights and sharing about your organizations. We just have one question in the chat as of right now. So I'll kind of summarize this, but essentially the question is, what are some barriers that survivors may experience when navigating and trying to utilize the state's victims compensation funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand that. I'm reading it. I think I understand what you're asking with the, with the timeline, with the deadlines for crime victims compensation, as we just talked about. Um, sometimes information is given to somebody who is still in shock, and it might be expected that they're going to go ahead and look at that and complete it in time. But in fact, that piece of paper that is not something that the timing of delivering that information wasn't ideal, and so people do miss that deadline. That's real. I know they extended the time to report most recently in a new bill, but I will say that from my perspective, what is really critical is to understand that, while we have technology, while we have, for instance, a portal that allows folks to upload, not everybody accesses technology the same. I think we have to think about choice, and some folks prefer a paper to be mailed to them in the mail, and just looking at the different choices that we can offer, because choices are taken away the moment a person is taken by violence. The more options we can give, the more empowering. And we're not all, like I said, we're not all into technology.
Right. I think that was like beautifully said, Elizabeth. Like you said, it's a lot of documentation that's needed for the application to be submitted. It is a lot. And also realistically, it's trauma with associated with completing that application. Prime example, um, we submitted an application for a mother who lost her son. As we're going through, we met with her, we were getting the finalized documents and preparing to submit. It came to a point where we were like, okay, we're going to need the death certificate. And she looked at us and said, hey, this is my first time looking at the death certificate. This is my first time looking at it. And right then and there, it kind of dawned on us. It was like, hey, let's take a break. Like, let's take a break from this application. Let's kind of do some breathing exercises. Let's give you a space to feel safe if you need to talk through everything. So it's those small things that we may not even think about until it's brought to our attention. But like Elizabeth said, the timeline, it takes a while. It takes a while for a person to get approved or denied. So I think for us, we built a great relationships with individuals that we can call or email and say, hey, where are we at with, getting where are we at in the process? Where is this family at in the process? That way they don't have to worry about it. Like, they're constantly getting updates, even if there's no change within 2 weeks, at least they're getting it from a person who is doing it on their behalf. I will say that.
Thank you. And then another question we have is, someone asked, you all talked about taking care of the workers to prevent burnout. So can you name kind of how specifically you all are doing that?
Are you okay? So I see the question. Is this for outside of our organization? I believe that's the question. Now, I think I'm reading that correctly. When we launched Renew and Restore after Helene, we defined it as frontline workers, but it was anybody, honestly, and it was facilitated by a therapist who has trauma experience and trauma training, um, and that was really well received. And it's one of my dreams, I will be very candid with you all, to launch something that is more general for anyone in the field, that's also a safe space. Um, so what I've seen where I'm sitting is community based, yes, but I'm also involved, as I shared, collaborating with district attorneys' offices. And those staff members are also copying discovery, reading police reports, sitting in homicide trials. And so I think about everybody in the system, and I would love to have support for all of us. Right now, it is a capacity issue. So stand by, because I hope to have something that is statewide and broad soon, but it is a capacity issue.
Yeah. And I would say our department, at least with community safety, we're we are a very, how can I say this? I don't want to say free, but we are a very free department. Like we really take an approach of just simply asking, doing constant check-ins with all staff, like, hey, are you okay? Because a lot of the work that we do across all of our programs are client facing. So especially within our specific office, the Office of Survivor Care, I'm that supervisor where I'm constantly checking and saying, hey, how are you? How are you doing? Especially after our clinician has done a session. How are you? Do we need to take a walk? Do you need to take a walk? Just pretty much saying like, hey, I'm with you. I understand that you're doing a lot. You're taking on a lot on a daily basis when speaking with our survivors and being present for them. But I want to make sure that you have time for yourself to do self care. I want to make sure you have time for yourself. If you need to take that mental health day, that you take that day, because we want to make sure that one, you're in a good space. Because if you're not in a good space, how can we try to encourage our survivors? How can we make sure that our survivors are getting the best resources that they need? So I'm that person. I'm really straightforward and just saying, hey, just let me know what you need. Even when we do our one-on-ones, like the weather is breaking, like we take walks. I take a walk with our clinician where we do our one-on-ones, but we also have check-ins. We have interns on our team now, and I do the same thing with them. How are you? How's school going? Do you need to take a day? Do you need to take a break? Just being present. Just being present, not only for the people that we're working with, but being more present for our staff. I think that's the key, because they're like, our staff, we have lives outside of our traditional work hours that we may be dealing with on a daily basis also. So we don't want to necessarily bring and project that on the survivors that we're working with. So are you okay? And that's simple. That costs us nothing. You don't even need a referral to ask the person, are you okay?
Mhm. I think, and I'll add to that real quick, I'm watching the time, but I think internally, one of the things that I stress is put your leave on on our shared calendar. So everybody knows it's, I know we've gotten accustomed to, I'm off, but if you need me, text me. And I try to say, please don't. You really don't need anything. Put your autoresponder on, boundaries, saying no, and marking your leave. So you really can unplug. That's kind of an internal thing here.
Yeah, thank you both for that. It's definitely really important that we ourselves are also mirroring the self-care that we're telling other folks, the clients and the communities that we serve to engage in. We do have 1 minute here, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our conversation. There were a couple more questions within the Q&A or within the chat, but I'll share Elizabeth and Ontario's information if you all want to follow up about those questions. I'll send that in a email after this. Um, so, so I wanted to kind of highlight a couple of things from our office. So let's see if we can try to share this screen again really quickly. Um, I just wanted to say, thank you all again for participating, of course, and attending. Again, there the QR codes for our website. If you're interested in joining our listserv and staying connected with us, please sign up. And I also will be sharing with you all a post-webinar evaluation. It's really important that we, get your feedback so we can use those evaluations and that information to tailor the content and resources that you all want to see and need to, better execute the work that you all are doing within your communities. And I also wanted to highlight that our office is bringing back our regional meetings for this summer. So those of you who are in North Carolina and are in the middle region of North Carolina, we have opened up registration for um, the Middle Region registration meeting that'll happen at the end of May. And I'll drop that in the chat here. So if you're interested in attending, please sign up quickly. The deadline for registration ends, I believe, beginning of next week. Other than that, thank you all so much for joining. Again, please fill out that post eval, and I will follow up with sending Elizabeth and Ontario's information. And that's it. Thank you all so much.